Okay, I'd like to first start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we are gathered today and pay my respects to their elders, past, present and future. So as Anna said, I'm doing my PhD at the Australian University, National University. Just to give you a bit of context, we are talking about Nigina country, which is in the West Kimberley region of Western Australia. For over 20 years, Nigina women have been leading projects of cultural actions, economic and self-determination initiatives in their communities, and it's always the wider aim of sustainable economic development on country by Nigina people, for Nigina people. So my PhD examines these actions and it deconstructs the dominant discourses in which the women's lived experiences have taken place. So I look at the women's agency in a neo-colonial context of rampant industrialisation and neo-colonialism, new assimilation policies, and through their choice of film as a counter-discourse and a medium to communicate and empower themselves. So one thing that I'd like to say is that Nigina women had been working for 10 years with film before I arrived in the Kimberley, so it was their chosen medium. And today I particularly want to look at one aspect of all this, which is film as a fluid and open-ended process, which is in constant flux. So I'm French originally. I came to Australia 15 years ago. I started making films with Aboriginal communities about 12 years ago. Right around Australia, but particularly with two communities, one in the Tweed in northern New South Wales and one in the Kimberley with Nigina women. 12 years ago, I think a little bit naively, I suppose, I started out as the invisible filmmaker. That was the position I placed myself in. I just got my camera, went to communities who had invited me to document their stories and said, okay, what are the stories that you want to tell us? Okay, and here's the camera, and this is your story. What do you want to say? So my approach already then was very much based on listening. It's very much a keyword. It's the first word of my PhD title, and has been over the years, listening to voices, an indigenous approach. Based on individual conversations, so it's never, the wider reality, it's people's realities, people's lived experiences, people's right to tell their story as they want to tell it. No script, obviously, coming into community without a script, without a preconceived idea of what the film might be or what the story that we tell may be. So the styles of film, when I started working with Nigina women for 8 years ago now, they invited me to come because they had a lot of initiatives that were happening on country. It was a very dynamic, very energetic time. They were building a wilderness centre, creating a cultural centre. They were publishing books of Nigina stories. They had a language program. They were putting together a dictionary and a language software program. So they had all these things that were going on within a framework of culture conservation economy. So we started using film as a tool, an educational tool for younger generations in the community. So very much an intra-community thing that the women wanted to pass on knowledge to the young people in the community. An archival tool, filming a ceremony, just to record it, just to know that it was recorded for future generations. Promotional tool, some of these communities had, set up cultural tourism businesses and just wanted to promote what it was that they were doing and just reach a wider audience. So some of these films actually went to France and Germany just to promote, businesses. And also we use film a lot as a reporting tool. So when the Aboriginal organisations I worked with had got funding, had got money for different projects, we made a film about that project and what happened, and sort of like as a report, if you want, at the end of the project, interviewing people in the project. So that happened a lot with training camps. When young people came and did TAFE certificates and things like that. So they were very useful in that respect. At the same time as this was happening, external circumstances were changing. So there were some changes in the socio-political climate, which meant that the women's endeavours became more difficult, and their message became more urgent. For instance, this dream of creating, culture conservation economies in all the Nigina communities along the Factual River was seen as being threatened by the industrialization of the Kimberley, particularly the advance of the mining industry. So in that respect, I think the women's voices became more representative of wider indigenous movements across the world. They became themselves very conscious of this. And there was a will to share a message with the wider world, which was based not on exoticism, not on the other and what makes us different, but on our common humanness. So there was this will to say, this is who we are, this is where we come from, but this is where we want you to understand and where we're inviting you in our world, and let's look at what makes us human. So it was very much, there was a will for the women to be grounded in their country, in their landscape, in their language, but also to communicate their belonging and our belonging to the wider world. So the methodology that we use is really based on dialogue. So it is born of dialogue, of conversations, individual conversations. So it's not representative of a whole community of people. It's mainly individual conversations. They're not interviews. I never have a set of questions. I often joke that I've been going to the Kimberley for 8 years and probably never asked one question, because people know what they want to talk about when I get there. So it's born of dialogue. It's consisting of dialogue with these conversations in the film, and it's creating further dialogue. So it's very much an all-encompassing thing. So our grounding principles, very quickly, it's always a community-based agenda. Trust, obviously, long-term involvement. Jean Rouge used to say, the French ethnographic filmmaker used to say that you have to spend at least 20 years with people to actually start understanding their worldview in a deeper way. So there's always a lot of consultation, a lot of feedback, participatory, emancipatory, looking at Nigina women as agents of change and empowering themselves through the messages that they're put in the films. Now, what about the filmmaker and all this, though? In the meantime, so I was a filmmaker, and in the meantime I'd gone into the PhD phase of my life as well. So I was coming from, obviously, my own personal set of values and ideas, my research, but also I was being influenced by Nigina women's worldviews with whom I'd worked for so long, which, Pia refers to this as an open-ended interaction where, the filmmaker becomes progressively influenced by the worldview of the people they work with, and that leads to a convergence of ideas, which Terence Turner talks a lot about in his films with the Kayapo people of Brazil, and which means that the filmmaker gradually has to become interventionist, has to become, an activist, and has to, the position of the filmmaker evolves, throughout this process. And it was a very interesting thing for me to find out, because from being invisible, or from wishing to be invisible 12 years ago, I was then asked 2 years ago to appear in this film by the women. They said, you have to be in the film, you have to explain what you're doing and where you're coming from and the work that you do with us. And you're a PhD student, so you're an expert, you've got to talk in there. And I was really confronted by that. I spent 3 months saying no to being in the film, but it was really good as a turning point to analyse my role within this process, because I do indeed have a lot of control over the editing, even though it's a back and forth feedback consultation all the time. I do choose, the bits of interviews that are going to go in the film and everything. So it was a very, very interesting process. what I found out too is that for me it was very much a learning process, in that in that open-ended interaction, when you spend a lot of time with people you work with, you come to see the world through their eyes, and learning to see. So, for instance, Eric Michaels talks about this, where if you have a camera pan over a desert landscape, as a white person, that's all you see. You see a desert landscape. But for the Aboriginal person who comes from there, they might see dreaming crabs. They will see stories. They will see ancestors. They will see camps, where they've been. They will see so many other things that we don't see. And so, as a filmmaker, I probably still understand only 1/1000th of what's going on when I'm somewhere. But I've had to learn to see the way the women see their world around them, and try and represent it in film. So one thing that I found with this film in particular, which we finished in October last year, was that the river, which is the center of the creation story for Miññina people, became a character in the film, very, very present in the film all throughout, which dissolves, as you'll see in a minute. And it's everywhere. And in the middle of the film, there's even a very, very slow pan, which lasts for about 2 minutes, without any comment, without any sound, without any music, without anything. And one of the comments of one of the old ladies, one of the elders who's in the film, when she saw the film, I said, "So what do you think?" And she said, proper water, this one, proper water. So I felt that I, sort of somehow realised a little bit, what they wanted to express in this, talking about the importance of the water and the importance of the Mandora, the Fitzroy River, for them. But I then, started to look at my role as the learning to see and making seen and making heard. So you are very much the intermediary between, what's happening there on country and what people will see as an audience. So what happened with this was that from the original films that we were making, which were very much community-based, which were local films, the women started to want to expand their message, to the wider world, basically, and so they're creating new connections with Indigenous peoples from all over the world. So the focus from local became national and then international. So Antonina, who's the lady on the right there, started campaigning at a more of a national level against industrialisation in the Kimberley, or unethical development, I should say, in the Kimberley. She was very much part of the James Price Point campaign a couple of years ago, north of Broome, to stop a gas hub going in. We ended up in 2012 at the Human Rights Commission at UNESCO talking about what was happening in the Kimberley and presenting 2 films there with the women, which was a long way from the local content which we thought, to have, at the beginning. In that, it's very much reflective of the rhizome effect that Deleuze has described, in which we are creating new connections with, national and international organisations and other people, but also reinforcing all alliances. So, in that respect, I can't show you the whole film because it's 45 minutes, but there are some points in the film where interviews with elders from the 1980s who have now passed away are used in conjunction with interviews of elders now. And this creates sort of like a historical dialogue between what the elders were saying then in the 1980s, which very much reflects what the elders are saying now, in 2014, 15. And so it reinforces those connections. So it's creating a dialogue through the generations within the community and establishing a dialogue with the outside world at the same time. So it's intra-communication and intercommunication, I call it. And then to finish with I see films as a performative device, connecting people to themselves and other locally, nationally and internationally. So they are multifocal and multivocal, inscribing the women in their own world and their landscape, but also taking the landscape and the people out to a wider audience. And as such, they're never ever finished, because we are always incorporating new connections, we're always incorporating new stories into the continuing stories. So that's why I describe film as a constant state of flux, because none of our films has ever been finished. They've been changed and re-edited to fit, the circumstances that, happen around us. So I'll show you two excerpts. I'll show you the start of the film with how the women wanted to start with the story that grounds Niigina people in their country, and then the end of the film and how it becomes a much wider picture. And I'd like to just finish by saying that as filmmakers we can only tell good stories by living them, but we also become the stories we tell. And I think that's a very, very important aspect. When I first started working with Niigina women, I thought I'll just go there for a month, make a film and go on and do something else. I've been going there for 8 years, and my life has very much become geared around what's happening in the community. My daughter has grown up spending 2 or 3 months of the year in the community. The connections that we have there are not just that of colleagues or collaborators. We have family there. We have, we are connected to people there. So much so that my late husband's ashes have been put in the billabong there, and so it's quite an emotional journey for all of us. So it's not so much their reality, it's not my reality, it's our reality together, and that intertextuality and that Marcia Langton referred to, and the in-betweenness of having the story there and another story there, and the story becoming a third story when you make that film. So I'll just show you this very quickly.
And Polina, ngai mara manan, nga mana jara nyigira nganga nyigira borla. My name is Anne Polina. I'm a traditional owner from the Lower Fitzroy River, and I'm speaking today on Niigina country. As a Niigina person, we are told very, very early in our upbringing, and part of our cultural identity is the story of Wunyumbul and how Wunyumbul created the river, and part of that is the song cycle. The song cycle is the whole story that talks about the creation of the river, and through that the journey of our ancestor Wunyumbul, and how Wunyumbul travelled along the river with his family, naming the places from the very beginning of the river right through to a very significant place called Midgerugun. Everyone who has an association with the river, whether they're Aboriginal or not, talk about how important the river is. And so for Niigina people, it is a special place. It's a sense of our whole creation. It's a sense of who we are as Imarawara people. Imarawara means belonging to the river.
Nganda, Nangara Buru, Marawara, Imarawara Nganda, Pugara, Imarawara Pugara.
We do what? Undumo, Niigina talk.
Marata Marine, Inara Kamarita, Islam Marwa, Islam the river. We come here, talking about the story. Nanga Arena, Nanga, Ongalagari, Babani, Tuguruni, Niigina, Nanga, rural Indiana.
One man now in Creek Nagin. No, Nagin. Although I from Murray and all, I got Magali. I don't know whatever.
Wunyumbul. Moglema, Wunyumbul. Palo, Purere. 자, 고래 바로 먹지. 맞아요, 뭐. 이거 말이야. 맞지. 뭐. 고래와네 왜라. 보죠. 미잘라나, 라정할 바로가 finish him right down, no more left, nothing.
When you will part any kind of thing, any kind of feed, any kind of fish and feed.
You've been finding now many of that. That's what all, right? You will see all the fish for one. You have been poisoning. What all? You have been poisoning. Finish.
This Magali, where they will program like this water for fish like this, and they have been poisoning my beer. All little rock here behind me, that's all of rock they have been put them back for fish, to kill the fish.
Kowa kishira, kira more spear. Tambo, majorwa mande.
So that gives you an idea of, how we basically grounded the women in their landscape at the start of the film, and also the men they work with. I just want to go very quickly to the end. That's about half a minute.
Shipbuilding with governmental entities and scientists. Unless we take those steps now, this tipping point means that if it tips too far, we won't be able to go back.
So this reflects the international nature of the work that the women are doing now. This is charity environmental philosopher, Dr. Jonathan Hall, with whom they've been working with, and it's been woven into the film as well.
Final message that I would like to leave the world is a song line that has been sung for many, many, many generations, from the beginning of time, from Bulgaragara. And Jabba Darby used to say, come in Jabba Jabba, come in Nyul Nyul, come in all the different people, come in Malma people, come to the river, let it feed you, let it soothe your spirit, and then go back to where you came from and tell your people out there how important the river is. And in more recent times, before Jabba passed away, he was singing a song, come in Japanese people, come in Chinaman people, come in English people, come in French people, come to the river of life, the Matawara, come and show the world that this is important for all of us, for our humanity. And the song cycle now is to go forward. So all you people out there, come and hear the call from Jabba, come to the Kimbleys, come and support us, because we are standing up for humanity.